What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dirty Bird Fly Through. And before we get started with the video, make sure y'all hit the like button, make sure y'all subscribe, make sure y'all share it out. All the support is greatly appreciated. And we're here to talk about the Week 2 matchup the Atlanta Falcons have versus the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football, the first of 5 scheduled primetime games for the Atlanta Falcons this year. And a very intriguing matchup on several aspects. Most certainly because it is a battle of two young quarterbacks entering their second year in the league. Both quarterbacks have made, under 6 starts. This will be Michael Penix's fifth start, JJ McCarthy's second start. So, definitely an intriguing aspect that is definitely going to be a focus of the game for sure. Just a little recap of what happened. The Falcons did lose week 1 to the Buccaneers, and what is a game that really could have gone either way, as we've talked about. And the Vikings, they were down big. They looked very sluggish the first 3 quarters on Monday night versus Chicago, but we saw that offense come to life in the fourth quarter. We saw JJ McCarthy really go to work and nail down that victory for Minnesota to go to 1-0. And there is a lot of praise and a lot of hype surrounding McCarthy. He won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. There's I think a lot of increased expectations for Minnesota heading into this game. While for the Falcons, it is, I think, a spot that this team is not necessarily uncommon to. The Falcons are a underdog in this game. I believe the line's currently at 4.5 last time I checked in favor of Minnesota. So definitely an underdog mentality heading into Minnesota on Sunday night. But starting off with the injury report, and both teams having, definitely some notable names on the injury report. Starting off with the Falcons, obviously the big story early in the week was Drake London after suffering that injury late last week versus Tampa. Would he be able to play? And Darnell Mooney, who suffered an injury the first day of training camp. It really feels like he could have gone last week, but he was kept out due to precaution. Both of those guys, they started off the week limited, but today they practice in full. There is no designation. So for the first time this season, we're going to see both Drake London and Darnell Mooney out there, which you got to assume is, of course, going to be a very big help to Michael Penix and getting this offense going. DeMarco Hellams with a hamstring injury, he was limited all week. He is questionable. Jamal Agnew, Jordan Fuller, Jack Nelson, Casey Washington, all out with injuries. This is probably the big story for me. James Pierce Jr. popped up on the injury report this week with a groin injury. He was limited all week, so he is questionable heading into the game. Billy Bowman Jr., another guy who popped up on the injury report on Thursday with the shoulder injury, but he did practice fully Friday. So I would probably expect Billy Bowman to be going on Sunday night. And then just Jake Matthews and Leonard Floyd, David Onyemata, you see them on there for their rest day. So I think the biggest thing for me is obviously seeing James Pierce's name on that injury report. The fact that, he's been limited all week with a groin injury, but he has been practicing. So it really feels like for him, it's going to just come down to how he's feeling pregame. But you got to imagine he's going to want to be out there playing. So if he shows that he can go pregame, and there's really no reason to not let him go if he feels like he can go, because we're getting ready to talk about in a minute the role that he could potentially play in the improvement of the Falcons. But if you can have James Pierce Jr. out there, a guy that you have invested a lot in, that is definitely ideal. Moving over to the Minnesota side of things, we see some names on here as well. Ryan Kelly and Josh Oliver. So we got some former Falcons for the Vikings here. Josh Oliver being one of them, or not Josh Oliver. I was thinking of Isaiah Oliver. But there is a former Falcon here that we're going to talk about in a second. But Ryan Kelly and Josh Oliver, they didn't practice earlier in the week, but they are going to be good to go. Jeff Okudah, this is the former Falcon cornerback, did not practice this week, and he is out on Sunday night. Andrew Van Ginkel, linebacker, he is going to be out with a concussion. Harrison Smith with an illness is questionable. Christian Darrisaw, this might be the biggest one. He is out Sunday night with a knee injury. So definitely, I think something that, once again, we talked about Tristan Wirfs being out last week, and the Falcons were able to get pressure on Tampa, but ultimately it feels like they still came up short in getting the job done. So once again, you have to take advantage of those injuries. You never want to beat a team injured, but when injuries present themselves, you got to take advantage of them. Jalen Nair, he is going to be playing. He popped up on the injury report. And then the rest of the injury report, Xavier Scott, Elijah Williams, Isaiah Rodgers, they're all playing. JJ McCarthy did pop up on the report, not because he was injured, but because um, he did welcome his first child into the world, so congratulations to him. So we'll see if him becoming a new father, if any of that potentially plays into his how he plays on Sunday night. So obviously, moving into the big story around this game, the big talking point, the reason why this game is in prime time, Michael Penix versus JJ McCarthy. This is not just a matchup between two second-year quarterbacks, but it's also a rematch of the 2024 National Championship where Michigan and JJ McCarthy beat Michael Penix's Washington Huskies. And you definitely have to imagine that Penix wants revenge, that he wants to deliver that receipt on the national level to JJ McCarthy for what happened in that national championship. And at the end of the day, this could be the start of, seeing these two constantly matching up in the NFL. These are two guys that I believe are always going to be tied together in some way, obviously due to that national championship, due to coming out in the same draft class. The Falcons do play the Vikings a lot, so I feel like this is going to be a matchup we see a lot of. But as far as this game in particular goes, both of them being young quarterbacks, it's really going to, I think, come down to which one is able to get more support. We saw late in the game, Minnesota, they uplifted JJ McCarthy. They gave him the support, and that is what allowed them to get that win late. Michael Penix really did not feel like got a lot of support last week versus Tampa. And so far in his NFL career, he's made play after play after play and given the Falcons a chance to win every single game he has started so far. But more times than not, whether it's Younghoe Koo missing a kick or Riley Patterson missing a kick or the defense giving up a lot of points, these games have not gone in the favor of Michael Penix. You get the feeling that eventually these games are going to have to start going in the Falcons and Michael Penix's favor. But for that to happen, you got to give him support. You got to finish the job. So this game is really going to come down to just how much support the Falcons can give Michael Penix is going to determine how well he is able to match up with JJ McCarthy. Because we know what we saw from Minnesota. We know that Minnesota, being at home, this being their home opener, they are going to do everything they can to give McCarthy that support. We saw it. Of course, there could be questions about could Minnesota be in a potential letdown spot. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but you got to give Michael Penix support. If the Falcons want to win this game, those missed opportunities we saw last week, some of those drops, some of those miscues on offense, we're going to have to give Michael Penix support, and that support starts with Zach Robinson. And that leads us into our next topic. There must be better offensive play calling. We've seen this now 2 straight seasons, week 1 with Zach Robinson, where it really feels like the Falcons lost largely in part due to the fact that they did not open up the playbook. They kept things very shallow, and of course, week 1, you never want to fully show your hand. Last year, it was a little bit more understandable with Kirk Cousins. This year with Michael Penix, there was no reason not to open up the playbook. You know what Michael Penix can offer you. And even with a pretty shallow playbook and only 2 plays under center and 95% of the time either being in pistol or shotgun, you still saw Michael Penix give you a pretty damn good game. But you're going to have to open up this offense more for him. You're going to have to let Michael Penix have the keys in its entirety in order for this offense to truly thrive. And in order for that to happen, Zach Robinson is going to have to open things up. We know that Zach Robinson's comfort zone is in the pistol. Zach Robinson talked about earlier this week. The pistol allows them to do a lot of things on offense. And that's absolutely understood. You got to have your foundation for the Falcons. It is the pistol. But your foundation is set for you to be able to open things up. And it never felt like the Falcons truly opened things up at all versus Tampa. If you're going to have to go into Minnesota and you're going to have to open some things up, you're going to have to get some stuff going under center. You're going to have to get some motions going. And it cannot just be the same ones. You're going to have to throw some wrinkles in there. With having all your wide receivers back, I think that's going to give you a better opportunity to do that. So it's got to be done. You got to give Michael Penix the full tools to succeed in this offense. Because if you open this playbook up for Michael Penix, I truly believe that the sky is the ceiling. I do not know what the limit actually is because we know what talent Michael Penix has. We know what Drake London and Darnell Mooney can do. And we saw Kyle Pitts get the ball last week also. And we all know the talent Bijan Robinson is. So you cannot keep this offensive play calling shallow. You got to open it up, especially against a really good defensive coordinator like Brian Flores, who may just be the best defensive coordinator in the National Football League. You got to open this thing up. And you really have to be prepared to play a chess match. Now, speaking of the defensive side of the ball and defensive play calling, last week we did see some promise from this defense. We saw this defense get pressure. We saw them have their spotlights in the secondary. But in the end, we still saw this defense come up short. We saw them give up the back-breaking play that allowed Tampa to grab the lead late and allowed them to get the victory. So, as far as that goes for the defensive side of the ball, it still has to improve because it really was, it did not feel like a change. But when you actually got into the synopsis of everything, you could see a Falcons defense that was more aggressive. You could see them blitzing. You could see them bringing pressure. You could see them making Baker Mayfield run for his life. And Baker Mayfield, I honestly think, is maybe one of the most underrated scrambling quarterbacks in the league. Baker is able to make plays really out of nothing. Now, JJ McCarthy has some wheels. He's able to run. But you do also still have to keep in mind, I think the big thing with McCarthy is everyone is hyping him up after this one game. The reality is that they shouldn't have even been in the game that late. Chicago at home had opportunities to put them away and they failed to take advantage of it. And that just opened the door for Minnesota. And you give credit to the Vikings, and I definitely think it raised the awareness level that we have for this team and JJ McCarthy. But at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield is now entering year 8 in the league. JJ McCarthy is going to be playing his second start on Sunday Night Football. So we have to realize we're going to have more opportunities, I think, to really take advantage of still some of those early jitters that McCarthy could have. This is, I think, going to be a game for Minnesota where if they are for real, If they are a team that's going to come out early and make a statement and get off to a white hot start, kind of like how they did last year, you're going to have to do it here. McCarthy's going to have to prove that he doesn't have those jitters. You're going to have to do it a second straight week. I'm not saying he can't, but it is a big test for Minnesota. It could absolutely be a letdown spot, and you're going to have opportunities on this defense up front against JJ McCarthy. And you're also going to have, I think, some opportunities to create turnovers. We saw JJ McCarthy throw a pick six last week, and the Falcons honestly should have had about at least 3 interceptions last week. We saw Xavier Watts just, I mean, you want to talk about a game of inches, come a hairline close to grabbing probably about 2 interceptions last week. So you got to believe those opportunities are coming. Eventually, it's gonna turn into actual takeaways. And of course, those sacks are going to come because we saw the promise, but it's got to start soon. And I think the Falcons are going to have a better opportunity against a JJ McCarthy starting a second game without Jordan Addison, by the way, than against Baker Mayfield. I don't care how many receivers Tampa is down. Baker is a veteran. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. JJ McCarthy in his second start. The defensive promise, you're going to see the defense have opportunities to take that step up this week. And diving more deep into a specific battle with one of our defensive players, A.J. Terrell, a top 10 corner in the league, coming off a very stellar year, going up against the man who many would consider to be the best wide receiver in the National Football League in Justin Jefferson. And this has always been a matchup that whenever these two teams get together, we're all zeroed in on. From obviously even before both of them got to the NFL and the national championship with LSU and Clemson, facing off in their rookie year. They faced off a few times since. Last year being the most recent example, and you definitely felt like that they're, in that battle, even though Minnesota absolutely went off, that Terrell did hold his own. We saw AJ Terrell, be able to take care of Justin Jefferson to an extent. Obviously, it's going to be a back and forth battle. It's an iron sharpens iron thing with these two. You're going to see Justin win some battles. You're going to see AJ win some battles. So this is definitely also going to be one of those matchups you have to see go in our favor if you want the Falcons to win this game. You cannot let Justin Jefferson go off. You got to trust A.J. Terrell, a man that you're paying $20 million a year to go out and take care of business against maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson. That is absolutely going to be critical if the Falcons truly want a chance to win this game. But we've seen it. We've seen A.J. Terrell, especially as he has gotten more wise, as he has gotten further into his NFL career, be able to handle these types of matchups better, including against Justin Jefferson. So you got to put the confidence in AJ that he's going to be able to figure this thing out on Sunday night and be able to lock Justin Jefferson down. And as far as just generally, is this game a must win? Now, looking at the Falcons' schedule after this game, we go to Charlotte to face the Panthers, we come home to face Washington, and then we have our bye week. It's an early bye week. And then we come back on 15 days rest at home to play the Bills on Monday night. And then we go out to San Francisco for a Sunday night matchup there in Week 7. So, when we're thinking about it, this game is going to be important. Is it a must-win? If the Falcons lose this game, is the season over? No chance at all. I'm not going to go that far. But I feel like last week's game, there wasn't really that much panic because it's only one game. Now, in a 17-game season, is 0-2 what it was in a 16-game season? No. because you have more opportunities. We've seen teams go from 0-2 to being able to make the playoffs in a 17-game season. But it truly does feel like for this Falcons team, this still is a must win because you have to come out and you have to make a statement at some point. There's, I think, a lot of questions truly about do the Falcons have the makeup to win these big games against Minnesota? And we saw them do it last year in Philadelphia. So it's not, I really think, a question of if the Falcons can win these big games, but you just really have to put it together and you have to be able to be consistent. And that is what is going to carry you to victory. The Falcons had issues last week versus Tampa being consistent. You're going to have to be more consistent in this game to win it. And obviously, week two, we see things start to come together more so. We're going to see things get better and things really sharpen up. So at the end of the day, is this a must win? Kind of. It kind of is a must win because even if the Falcons lose this game, while maybe the season isn't over, I really think that the alarm is going to start to go off, and you do not want to get in that position this early in the year. Now, taking a look around the NFC South and some of the games that are going on with some of the other teams in this division, the New Orleans Saints, they start their season with 2 home games. Week 2, they're hosting the San Francisco 49ers in the Superdome. Now, San Francisco's dealing with a lot of injuries, so you definitely feel like they may have a better chance than they would in any other scenario. But listen, the Saints, I think we saw last week what they were. They're gonna be a hard team to watch. Maybe they keep some games close, but they're gonna be a terrible team. The Carolina Panthers, that is a team that I really think you want to talk about losers in week 1. There was maybe some dark horse hype around them this offseason, but the Panthers had an absolutely underwhelming week 1 performance in Jacksonville. They now head out to the desert to take on the Arizona Cardinals. And after that, they're going to be going home for their home opener in Charlotte, and they're going to be welcoming us in there. So you definitely get the feeling that they want to get it back on track, but they didn't look good. And I think they could be a team that looks better this week, but still, I really don't know if they're going to be able to go to Arizona and get the win. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are in prime time this week on Monday night versus the Houston Texans. And that's going to be an interesting game. It feels like it could go either way. The Texans being at home, I would maybe give the slight advantage to them. But listen, we've seen Tampa be able to win some gritty games before. And, this feels like a game that they are certainly not out of, that they definitely have a chance to win. So taking a look now at the player to watch for both teams. And for the Falcons, I could have picked a lot of guys, but to me, it came down between 2 players. It came down between Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. And I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson here, as I am probably going to for a lot of these games. Because at the end of the day, Bijan is the engine of this offense. We talk about Michael Penix a lot and how, amazing Michael Penix has been to start his NFL career. But Bijan is the engine of this offense. Bijan is the key that can unlock everything. He is the guy that defenses are focusing on, but defenses know they're not going to stop entirely. They're only looking to limit. So when I talk about you got to have better offensive play calling, that's not just in the passing game. That's also in the running game. You got to get things happening more under center. You got to get Bijan better chances to succeed in the running game. Now, we saw Minnesota do pretty well against the run last week. And obviously, the Falcons had a very tough matchup against Vita Vea, even with himself being injured last week. He still had a stellar game and a very big impact for the for Tampa on that defensive line. Now, this offensive line, once again, hold a whole weekend, a whole week play with each other. I would expect to see them improved. So I'm getting ready to talk about it in a second. I feel like one of the keys to this game is going to definitely be establishing a more consistent run game and getting that going to set the Falcons up to be able to win. Now, as far as the Vikings and their player to watch, I feel like, you also could have gone in some different directions because Minnesota, they have guys on offense to support JJ McCarthy. I talked about Justin Jefferson. I really feel like that's a job you got to leave up to AJ Terrell. We know who Justin Jefferson is. The guy I think to watch on Minnesota is going to be TJ Hawkinson. We know for young quarterbacks, and this is also why I was almost going to really say Kyle Pitts might be the guy to watch. For Minnesota and JJ McCarthy, we really didn't see CJ Hawkinson get that much involved last week. I would expect that we're going to see them try to test the Falcons linebackers this week. Now, Divine Diablo had a very good game last week versus Tampa where he was all over the field. Can he keep that up this week and contain a threat in TJ Hawkinson that, if they let get loose, could potentially unlock what this Vikings offense can be? Because then that could open up lanes for Aaron Jones, and then obviously that's when Justin Jefferson could come into play. So, TJ Hawkinson, that is a guy that you're going to have to contain because still, for a young quarterback early, their best friend is a tight end and a running game. It's kind of like what we're talking about with Michael Penix. We see him getting the ball to Kyle Pitts more, and we like seeing that because a tight end is supposed to be a quarterback's best friend along with their running game. So it's really going to be a game that I think comes down to who is able to better maintain and get those aspects of their offense going. That could really be what this game comes down to. Who is able to support their young quarterback better with their running game and their tight end play? Now, moving into the keys of victory, and the first key to victory is you got to turn those pressures into sacks. The Falcons, it had a ton of pressures last week. It always felt like they were collapsing the pocket on Baker Mayfield, but they were never truly able to make a play. You got to turn that into some sacks this week. You got to see the Falcons get the quarterback on the ground. You have to see JJ McCarthy on the ground and rattled early in this game because I'm telling you right now, we saw it late last week. You cannot let Minnesota get into a rhythm with Kevin O'Connell calling that offense. So you got to turn those pressures into sacks. James Pierce Jr., we talked about earlier, is on the injury report. I think it's critical he plays Sunday night because he is a guy that you really, I think, just have to let roam loose because eventually it's going to turn into sacks for him. He was playing his first career game last week and he had 4 pressures. That's going to turn into sacks. And if you let him roam loose, I believe it could as soon as this Sunday night. But we're going to have to see the Falcons generate constant pressure and get McCarthy onto the ground some. The second key to victory, and I feel like this is an important one that we really have to examine, is taking the crowd out of it early. Minnesota has one of the loudest fan bases in this league. And when that crowd gets going, they get going. And you gotta believe, this being prime time, they are absolutely going to be rocking for JJ McCarthy. They're going to be rocking for that team. They're coming off a 14-win season. It's Sunday night. They are going to pack that place out. So you got to take that crowd out of it early. And that's why I say you got to get off to a fast start like we saw last week. It was amazing seeing last week the Falcons, the third play of the game, score. You're going to have to get that running game going. You're going to have to see pressure early. Take the crowd out of it and do not let them be a factor as the game goes on. And then the third key to victory, and I really touched on this earlier, you got to open the playbook. If you want to win this game, it is going to be Zach Robinson finding himself in a chess match against Brian Flores, who you know is going to send pressure. But Michael Penix is one of the better quarterbacks in this league against pressure from what we have seen so far. He thrives under pressure. We know he's not known to be a running quarterback, but when he has to take off, he can take off, and that's what you need for a modern day NFL quarterback. You got to open up this offense. You got to be in your bag. You got to take advantage of having both your wide receivers out there, and that is going to be how you win this game. You have to see improvement from the offensive side of the ball. So, as far as final predictions go, how do I think this game is going to turn out? I think we're going to see. I see some people saying that it's going to be a high scoring game. I'm not really getting the feel from that game. Of course, it could be. The last time that the Falcons matched up with the Vikings last year, we gave up 42 points to them. I do not see that happening again. I just don't. I think we got to realize that that Minnesota team had Sam Darnold, who had a career year, and also the Falcons were in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. The Vikings were in the midst of a 9-game winning streak. So you really want to talk about it. Minnesota had every bit of momentum on their side, but it was still 21 all tied late in the third quarter. The Falcons were in that game last year with Kirk Cousins, and basically his arm 3/4 of the way fallen off from the rest of his body. Now you add Michael Penix in. It's earlier in the year, so I still think there's some unknowns. Minnesota is, at the end of the day, Minnesota is still trying to get into a rhythm, and I really think you gotta wonder, does Minnesota already feel fully confident in themselves and maybe a little too overconfident, it being only week 2, and the fact that things are still going to change? It's really going to take a few weeks to fully get into rhythm. Could this potentially be a game where JJ McCarthy and the Vikings get that reality check? I really think you got to think about that. And also the Falcons. This is kind of similar to when they went into Philadelphia last year and pulled off the upset versus the Eagles when no one really thought we were going to. So I think we're going to see better play calling this week from Zach Robinson. I would almost be willing to guarantee that. I do think we're going to see Zach call a better game. I do think we are going to see some sacks on JJ McCarthy. How many is the question? I think as long as maybe you can, get 2 or 3, that is okay. I think that at the end of the day, if you're able to shut things down late and take control of the game, and you see Michael Penix going out there, you see Bijan getting involved, I think the Falcons are set up to win this game. So give me the Falcons 24-17 to pull off the upset on Sunday night in Minnesota. And at the end of the day, you need that statement win early, and I think for the Falcons, this would definitely put us on the right track and could also be that statement win. Michael Penix needs that big win. Michael Penix has played amazing in pretty much every start he has made so far, or at least, if you don't want to use amazing, at least giving the Falcons a chance to win late, but he's been on the losing end, really not to his fault. It's going to change eventually. We got our quarterback, and there is a different feeling than previous years. Yes, the alarm is still up. We know we got to win this game, but I think the difference is that we have our quarterback this time around to complement this offense. We're heading in the right direction on defense. So I'm going to pick the Falcons to win this game. I think the Falcons win 24-17 to pull off the upset in Minnesota. But anyways, appreciate everyone for watching. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to share it out, remember to support. Thank you for watching the Dirty Bird Fly Through, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.